I left because sometimes loving someone means knowing when to let go, even if it breaks your heart. I left for someone else, but the love we shared taught me what it means to truly care. Walking away was not giving up. It was choosing growth over comfort. I left because my soul needed healing that our love could no longer provide. Sometimes, leaving is the bravest way to honor what we once had. I left for another, but I will always cherish the moments we created together. I left because staying meant living a life that no longer felt true to me. Leaving you was the hardest choice, but also the most necessary. I left for someone else, hoping we both find the happiness we couldn't share. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to let someone go free. Because I realized that loving yourself sometimes means stepping away. I left for another, but the lessons from our love will never fade. Walking away was painful, but it opened a door to new possibilities. I left because the love we had was no longer enough to keep us whole. Leaving was not betrayal. It was a search for a peace I couldn't find with you. I left for someone else, but I hope you find the love you deserve. Sometimes love requires the courage to say goodbye before it's too late. I left because my heart was calling for a new chapter. I left for another, but I will always remember you with gratitude. Leaving you was the hardest goodbye I've ever had to say. I left because I needed to find myself outside of our love story. Sometimes love means walking away so both hearts can heal. I left for someone else, but I hope you find joy and peace. I left because staying felt like losing who I was becoming. Walking away was an act of love for both of us. I left for another, but I carried the memories of us close to my heart. Leaving you was a painful but necessary step toward growth. I left because the silence between us spoke louder than words. Sometimes love means choosing your own happiness, even if it means letting go. I left for someone else, but I wish you all the best in life and love. I left for another, but I still hold respect for what we had. Sometimes love means letting go to find peace within. I left because loving you meant losing myself. Walking away was a step toward finding my true self. I left for someone else, but I hope you find love that lasts. Leaving you was a painful lesson in love and self-respect. I left because I needed to heal before I could love again. Sometimes love means stepping into the unknown. I left for another, but I carry the lessons from our love with me. At part because the love we shared no longer fit our lives. Leaving you was not easy, but it was necessary. I left for someone else, hoping we both find happiness. Sometimes the hardest love story is knowing when to say goodbye. I left because my heart was leading me somewhere. Walking away was an act of courage and self-love. I left for another, but I hope you find your peace. Leaving you was the hardest goodbye, but it was the right one. I left because I had to choose my own happiness. Sometimes love means letting go to grow. I left for someone else, but the memories we made will stay. I left because staying felt like losing myself. Walking away was a painful but necessary choice. I left for another, hoping you find love and light. Leaving you was an honesty and courage. I left because my heart was seeking healing. Sometimes love means knowing when to walk away. I left for someone else, but I carry you in my heart. Leaving you was the hardest decision, but it was needed for growth. I left for someone else, but that doesn't mean the moments we shared were any less real. Sometimes love's journey requires detours we never planned, even if it means leaving someone behind. I left because staying felt like losing the part of me that still dreamed of happiness. Leaving you wasn't the end of my love story. It was the start of a new chapter I had to write. I left for another, but I hope the love we had taught you what true love feels like. Walking away was the hardest lesson in love I ever had to learn, because sometimes the heart knows what the mind can't yet understand. I left you for someone else, but my heart still whispers your name in quiet moments. Sometimes love is about knowing when to let go, even if it breaks your soul. I left because I needed to find peace inside me before I could truly love anyone else. I didn't leave to hurt you. I left because I needed to heal myself first. I left for someone else, but I never stopped wishing you the happiness you deserve. Walking away was my way of honoring the love that no longer fit the life we dreamed. I left for another, but I carry your kindness as a light that never dims. I left, not because I stopped loving, but because I had to love myself more. Sometimes love's greatest act is the courage to say goodbye. I left you for someone else, hoping someday we'd both find what we were missing. Leaving was an act of love disguised as loss. I left because staying was slowly killing the dreams I once held for us. I left for someone else, but the memories of you remain etched in my heart. Sometimes love means walking away so both hearts can heal. I left because I was searching for a happiness that wasn't ours to keep. I didn't want to leave, but I needed to find a way to breathe again. I left because the silence between us was louder than the words we said. Sometimes love means knowing when to hold on and when to let go. I left for another, but the love I had for you shaped who I am today. Leaving wasn't about replacing you. It was about finding peace I lost along the way. I left for someone else, but I wish you a lifetime of love and happiness. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to say goodbye. I left because my heart was whispering a new story, one I had to follow. I left you for someone else, but I carry the lessons of our love deep within me. Painful step toward healing and self-discovery. I left because sometimes love demands the bravery to walk away. I left for another, but I hoped your heart finds the peace mine couldn't hold. I left because the love we shared no longer fit the lives we wanted to live. Walking away was my way of protecting the love I still had inside. I left for someone else, but the memories of us are a quiet comfort in my soul. Sometimes love means letting go so both souls can grow stronger. I left because I was lost and needed to find myself again. Leaving wasn't a betrayal, it was a painful act of honesty. I left for another, but I wish you all the love and the light in the world. I left because I believed in a future that no longer included us. Sometimes love's greatest test is learning when to say goodbye. I left for someone else, but I hope you find the love that never leaves your side. Leaving you was a heartbreak that led me to healing. Left because my soul was searching for a peace I couldn't find with us. I left not to erase our story, but to write a new one for myself. Sometimes love means walking away to find the person you're meant to be. I left for another, but I carry your kindness as a cherished memory. I left because staying meant losing the parts of me I needed to keep. Leaving was the hardest love story I've ever had to live. I left for someone else, hoping we both find the happiness we deserve. Sometimes love demands the courage to say goodbye before it's too late. I left because my heart was guiding me toward a new beginning. I left you for someone else, not because I stopped loving, but because I needed to find myself again beyond us. Leaving you was the hardest choice I ever made. Sometimes love means knowing when to walk away for your own peace. I didn't leave to hurt you, but to heal a part of me that was lost in our story. You deserve someone who chooses you every day. I left because I couldn't be that person anymore. The moment I realized I needed someone else was the moment I understood how much I lost in trying to hold on. I left, not because I stopped caring, but because I found a version of happiness that wasn't ours to share. When I left you for someone else, it was less about them and more about the silence growing between us. Walking away wasn't a betrayal. It was the only way I could be honest with myself and with you. I left because my heart was asking for something different, even if it meant breaking both our worlds. I don't want you to hate me. I left to find what I lost inside, hoping someday you'll understand. Sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one that leads us to the truth we've been running from. Leaving you is a step toward freedom, not from you, but from the pain we couldn't fix. I left for someone else, but I carry the memories of us with me like a secret I'm too afraid to share. It wasn't easy to say goodbye, but it was necessary for my soul to breathe again. I left because staying felt like losing myself piece by piece in a love that wasn't enough. My heart wandered, not because it didn't love you, but because it was searching for a light we both lost. Sometimes love means letting go, even when your hands are still trembling to hold on. I left to find a part of me that was missing, the part you couldn't see or save. Walking away was an act of courage, not weakness, to protect the love I still have inside. I left you because I realized my happiness was more than a promise we couldn't keep. It's painful to admit, but I found peace with someone else when I couldn't find it with you. I left for a chance at healing, hoping that someday our wounds will tell a story of growth. My decision to leave wasn't a failure. It was a painful step towards self-discovery. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't stay in a place where love was just a memory. Leaving wasn't giving up. It was learning to love myself enough to walk away. I left because love sometimes demands bravery we don't know we have until we face goodbye. In leaving, I found a new path that I hope will lead us both to peace. I left for someone else, but the lessons I learned from us will never leave me. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to set someone free, even if it breaks your heart. I left because holding on was hurting us more than letting go ever could. Walking away was not forgetting you. It was learning to carry you differently inside my heart. I left for another, but the love I had for you shaped the way I love now. Sometimes the story ends because the characters grow apart, not because love fades. I left not to erase you, but to find a version of myself I had lost in our love. I left because I believed in the possibility of happiness, even if it wasn't with you. It wasn't easy to say, I am sorry, and goodbye in the same breath. Sometimes we leave because love isn't enough to keep us whole. I left you because I needed to stop losing myself in a love that didn't fit anymore. I left for someone else, but I carry your kindness as a quiet blessing in my heart. Sometimes leaving is the only way to protect the love you once believed in. I left because my heart whispered truths I was too afraid to face with you. I left you for someone else, but it was never about replacing what we had. It was about finding peace. I didn't walk away lightly. Every step was weighted with memories I still cherish. I left because the love we shared became a leaving you wasn't about giving up. It was about growing to the person I needed to be. I left for another, but I hope the love I had for you helps you heal someday. Sometimes the hardest love story is the one where two souls learn to say goodbye. I left because I realized love is sometimes about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. I left for someone else, but I wish you love and light on your path ahead. I left you because I was searching for a happiness that wasn't ours to hold. Leaving was my way of honoring the love we had, even if it couldn't last forever. I left because the silence between us grew louder than the words we once shared.